Hello and welcome. This video is for sixth grade math and it's dealing with the least common multiple or LCM. Okay, so the least common multiple or the LCM of two numbers is where we're looking to find the multiple that is the smallest that they have in common. So multiples are what happens when we multiply the number. And they look very similar to skip counting. So for 3, multiples would be 3, and then 3 times 2, which is 6, and 3 times 3, which is 9, 12, and so on and so on. And these can go on forever. So that's why we want to find the smallest one they have in common. Multiples of 9 would include 18, 27, then 36, and then 45, and on again forever and ever. Okay, so let's find a way to find the least common multiple. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this. One of them is to list all the multiples until you find the smallest one they have in common. Another one is to break it down to prime factorization and look for something that they have in common. Or my favorite method is where I try to find, I list the multiples of the bigger number and see which of them the smaller one fits into. So that's my favorite method. So what I'm going to do here is we have the numbers 3 and 9. Okay, so first thing I'm going to ask myself is, can I multiply 3 times something to get 9? And the answer is yes, I can. I can multiply 3 times 3 to get 9. So that means that the least common multiple for these two numbers is in fact 9. So I don't have to go any further. But let's go back to those multiples that I had listed so you can see how that works. So I listed the multiples of 3 and the multiples of 9. And remember, I'm looking for the smallest one they have in common. So only 3 has 3, only 3 has 6, but 3 has 9, and so does 9. So that means the smallest one they have in common is 9. So that's another way you can do it if you're more comfortable with that. Okay, so let's walk through some practice problems. For this one, we're looking for the least common multiple or LCM of 7 and 5. So I'm going to put 7 over here and 5 over here. So here's the first method where I just kind of make multiples of the larger number and see what 5 can multiply and become. So 5 cannot be multiplied to become 7. The next multiple of 7 would be 14. And I cannot multiply 5 times something to get 14. The next multiple of 7 would be 21, which I cannot multiply 5 times something and get 21. The next multiple of 7 would be 28, which I cannot multiply 5 times something to get 28. And then the next multiple of 7 is 35, which I can multiply 5 times to get 35. So that means the LCM, or least common multiple, of these two numbers is 35. And again, if you wanted to, you could list out the multiples for both. So I'll keep the ones for 7 there. Multiples of 10 would be, or 5 would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35 is the first one I hit that they have in common. So that's another way that you can figure it out. Okay, here's our next one. We're going to find the least common multiple for 8 and 6. So I'm going to put 8 here and 6 here. I'm going to start listing multiples of the larger number because I looked at 6 and realized I cannot multiply 6 to get 8. So the next multiple of 8 would be 8 times 2, which is 16. And now I cannot multiply 6 times something and get 16. So I need another multiple of 8. 8 times 3 would be 24. And aha, I can multiply 6 times something and get 24. So that means the least common multiple for these two numbers is 24. And this is a good time to talk about a question I get a lot. And that question is, well, can't I just multiply them together and get the least common multiple? And that is true in a lot of cases, like the one we just saw, 7 and 5, where 7 times 5 is 35, and then is the least common multiple. But it's not always true. And this is an example of how it's not always true. Because if I just multiplied 8 times 6, I'd get 48, which is not the least common multiple. Okay, so here's our next one. We're going to find the least common multiple of 7 and 3. Okay, so I'm going to start with 7, and I'm going to put 3 over here. So I know I cannot multiply 3 times something and get 7. So I need another multiple of 7. 7 times 2 is 14. I cannot multiply 3 times something and get 14. So I need another multiple of 7. And 7 times 3 is 21. So that does work because 3 times 7 is 21. So that works for that one. The least common multiple of these two numbers is 21. Okay, here's our next one. What is the least common multiple of 5 and 6? So I'm going to put 5 over here and 6 over here. 6 is the bigger one, and I cannot multiply 5 times something to get 6. So 6 times 2 is 12, which doesn't work for 5. 6 times 3 is 18, which does not work for 5. 6 times 4 is 24, which does not work for 5. And 6 times 5 is 30. So it looks like the least common multiple in this case is going to be 30. Okay, here is our last one. We're going to find the least common multiple of 8 and 9. So I'm going to start with 8 over here and 9 over here. Okay, I'm going to start by listing multiples of 9 since that's my bigger one. 8 and 8 times, you can't multiply 8 times anything to get 9. So I know I need another multiple of 9. So my next one would be 9 times 2, which is 18. That doesn't work for 8. 9 times 3 is 27, which doesn't work for 8. 9 times 4 is 36. Okay, that doesn't work for 8. 9 times 5 is 45. So that does not work for 8. 9 times 6 is 54. So that does not work for 8. Let's see, 9 times 7 is 50. No, no, just kidding. 63, which does not work for 8. And now we're up to 9 times 8, which is 72. So that definitely works for 8. So that means the LCM for these two numbers is 72. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you in the next video.